Welcome to the Sakimori Research Lab of Universal Spirit. Thank you very much for your visit, as always. In the 15th episode last time, we examined how the spiritualism movement in the early 20th century was part of a major project to cleanse the spiritual crisis of humanity and the cosmic scale surrounding the earth. We also examined the existence of Jesus or Christ, who led the great army of angels at the forefront. And especially in George Vale Owen's Spirit World Communication, it was written, "For now, my purpose is to talk about the advent of Christ himself," and in Moses' spiritual teachings, it was written by the Imperator Spirit, "The second coming of Christ is a spiritual return," and so on. So this time, we will examine how the prophecy of the signs of the coming of the Son of Man in the New Testament and the content of Steiner's lectures were fulfilled on earth. First of all, in the case of Rudolf Steiner, he said in his lecture, "The first signs of this soul power will be noticed relatively quickly in each soul. In the mid-1930s, these signs will be clearly shown. It's between 1930 and 1940. 1933, 1935, and 1937 will be particularly important. A special ability will appear in humans as a natural quality. A major change will occur, and the prophecy of the Bible will be fulfilled." In other words, Steiner prophesied that in order for the prophecy of the Bible to be fulfilled, the signs would be clearly shown on earth in the mid-1930s. Next, in order to understand what happened in Omoto in Japan around 1935, let's first check the content of the New Testament. In the 13th chapter of the Gospel of Mark, the signs of the coming of the Son of Man, Jesus Christ makes the following prophecy on the Mount of Olives. When Jesus was leaving the temple, one of his disciples said to him, "Look, teacher! What massive stones! What magnificent buildings! Do you see all these great buildings?" Replied Jesus, "Not one stone here will be left on another, every one will be thrown down." Gospel. In other words, as a precursor to the second coming of Christ, it is prophesied that the stones of a large and magnificent building will be destroyed to the point where there are no stones left. And in Omoto, there have been two instances of oppression. The first time, the Choseiden at the top of Hongu Mountain in Ayabe, which was built in 1910, was destroyed during the first Omoto incident in 1921. Furthermore, the second time, due to the outbreak of the Second Omoto Incident in 1935, temples and facilities in Ayabe City and Kamioka City were thoroughly destroyed in 1936. Also, the copper plates of the roof of the Moroku Hall and various tools in the hall were sold, the altars and sacred utensils were burned, and the buildings were also pulled down and dismantled. In addition, the Kinryase was reclaimed, and all the buildings such as the Sorisha, Oyashima Shrine, Golden Pavilion, Kodadama Pavilion, Kyoshu Pavilion, Treasure House, Tensisha Printing Factory were destroyed, the stone steps leading to the Moroku Hall were removed, the stone bridge was broken, the stone of the handwater was smashed with a hammer, the name on the tombstone of the Deguchi family was scraped off, the coffin of the founder was moved to a corner of the communal cemetery, and the grave was thoroughly demolished. In addition, the Gakuden, Tumiden, Kusiken, Maikauden, Daishouden, and Shanutiai in Kamioka were also destroyed. Among them, the Gakuden, which was built of reinforced concrete on a hill in the Kamiyama of Kamioka City in 1928, was blown up with 1,500 sticks of dynamite, and the debris was also crushed with a hammer. Furthermore, the branch gardens, song monuments, and shrines of the Holy Land of Omoto all over the country also became targets of destruction. However, 6 years after this second major oppression, Onisaburo Deguchi left some mysterious words. "When the use of Omoto was over and I thought I had to destroy the house, if I Onisaburo destroyed it, the believers would complain, but since the government destroyed it, there is nowhere to complain. And since they even took the land, I don't have to pay taxes. It's working out well." Not only that, but about a year before the second oppression, Onisaburo Deguchi left words predicting this. Question, Master, will there be another Omoto incident? Answer, there definitely will be. Question, Do I have to go to prison at that time? Answer: yes, it would be good if you went in for 100 days. And in fact, in the Second Omoto Incident that occurred the following year, Mr. Haritoyo Osawa was arrested in front of the house of Takehiko Yamagata in Sasebo City, and is said to have been released exactly on the 100th day. In addition, while predicting that there would be a second oppression, he was hastily building the buildings of the Kamiyama, and in particular, the Tumiden was completed in December 1935 and was demolished the following year. From this, it can be understood that Onisaburo Deguchi, while foreseeing the oppression as inevitable, had built many temples. And even if there had been no oppression, the fact that he was thinking of destroying it himself can only be considered as being conscious of the fulfillment of Christ's prophecy in the Gospel. If so, this prophecy of the signs of the coming of the Son of Man in the Bible is fulfilled by Onisaburo Deguchi preparing as Maitreya Bodhisattva, through the Second Omoto Incident in 1936. Next, in the 21st chapter of the Gospel of Luke, the signs of the coming of the Son of Man, Jesus makes the following prophecy. When they asked Jesus, "Teacher, when will these things, the destruction of the temple on the Mount of Olives, happen?" He said, "Be careful not to be deceived. For many will come in my name, saying, 'I am the Messiah Christ,' and 'the end is near.' Do not follow them. When you hear of wars and uprisings, do not be frightened. These things must happen first, but the end will not come right away." Then he said to them, "Before the end of this world comes, nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be earthquakes, and in various places there will be famines and pestilences, and there will be fearful events and great signs from heaven. But before all these things, they will lay their hands on you and persecute you, delivering you up to the synagogues and prisons, and you will be brought before kings and governors for my sake. This will result in your bearing testimony. So make up your mind not to prepare your defense in advance, for I will give you words and a wisdom that none of your opponents will be able to withstand or contradict. You will also be handed over to the courts, even your parents, siblings, relatives and friends. Some of you will be killed, and you will be hated by everyone because you are my disciples." And in Omoto, symbolic events that remind us of this prophecy are happening. 1925, asserted that I am not the second coming of Christ. 1928, Miroku Festival. Declared the birth of Maitreya. 1930, in Tales of the Spiritual World, Christ is declared to be a completely different person from Jesus of Nazareth. 1933, the spirit of Moroku Daishin was moved from Kotenkaku to the Kuden. 1935, the Second Omoto Incident broke out. And 61 people including Onisaburo and executives were arrested. 1936, multiple temples such as Choseiden and Gakuden were destroyed. Hidemaru Deguchi, Onisaburo's son-in-law, was hospitalized due to severe mental weakness caused by torture. Shiramin Karibara and Kyutaro Iwata died in prison. The sacred sites in Ayabe and Kamioka were forcibly sold. 1937, Onisaburo Deguchi was detained in Yamashina prison. 1940, the first trial verdict. Thus, in the 1930s, as Steiner indicated, everything happened in Omoto according to the prophecy of Jesus Christ written in the Bible, such as being persecuted, handed over to prison, relatives being handed over to court, and there being those who were killed. Also, while Jesus said that the person who says I am the Savior is a fake, Onisaburo Deguchi strongly denies that he is either Jesus or Christ. Furthermore, the Second Omoto Incident occurred in 1935, and Onisaburo Deguchi was detained in 1937, which also coincides with the time Steiner prophesied, making it a very symbolic event. So, did the prophecy of Jesus Christ's gospel? Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes, famines and pestilences in various places, and fearful events and great signs from heaven. Actually happen? Wars between nations. 1894, the Sino-Japanese War broke out. 1904, the Russo-Japanese War broke out. 1914, World War I broke out. Earthquake. 1923, the Great Kanto Earthquake. Epidemic. 1918, the Spanish flu raged on a global scale, infecting 600 million people and causing 4,000 to 5,000 deaths. Famine. 1918, a rice riot occurred on a national scale, centered in Yuzu City, Toyama Prefecture. Signs from heaven. April 20, 1910, Halley's Comet reached a magnitude of 3.3. Onisaburo Deguchi wrote about this in the official newspaper Spiritual World on February 1, 1919, as follows. In the world of Mithraea, both good and bad things appear at once. The guardian deity with 8 heads and 8 tails that went to Germany started a great world battle, the number of days during which was 1567. The people who died from the world flu was 56.7 million worldwide, and during the 5 years of the Great War, the number of dead and wounded was also 56.7 million. This is the significance of the 5.67 billion years that Shakyamuni mentioned. I don't know the accuracy of these numbers, but Onisaburo Deguchi was saying that the numbers related to man-made and natural disasters that occurred during the period corresponding to the signs of the coming of the Son of Man in the Gospel contain the numbers indicating the time of the appearance of Mithraea prophesied by Shakyamuni. Also, Steiner, in his lecture titled The Second Coming of Christ on February 20, 1910, when Halley's Comet was actually approaching, said the following. We are living in a very important period. We must describe the characteristics of the event of Christ's second coming that clairvoyant humans experience. We can describe the characteristics of Christ's second coming by paying attention to the universe and suggesting the events that are now approaching. That event is the appearance of Halley's Comet. This is a research subject of Rosicrucian spiritual science. The appearance of a comet is related to events in the spiritual world. Regular things like the work of planets orbiting the sun are suitable for mankind. The appearance of a comet affects regular events. Rosicrucian spiritual science has proven that each comet has a special impact on human evolution. Thus, the prophecy of Jesus Christ, there will be great signs from heaven, was fulfilled as the approach of Halley's Comet. In contrast, in Onisaburo Deguchi's Tales of the Spiritual World, the following statement is left. Postscript, John and Christ are destined to be reproduced in the northeast of the world, which is the divine providence from ancient times. When the star of the king appears in the sky, and when the scholars and wise men on the earth are astonished, the politics of heaven will be transferred to the earth, and it is the time when it is close to the world of Mithraea. This is the start of the soul reorganization and reconstruction of the 3,000 worlds. It is not certain whether this star of the king in the sky indicates Halley's Comet, but the activities of the model of John now Deguchi, the founder, and the model of Christ Onisaburo Deguchi are reproduced in Japan, and the signal to start the soul reorganization and reconstruction is the manifestation of the star of the king, which overlaps with Steiner's recognition of Halley's Comet. In fact, the prophecy that Steiner showed should have indicated not only the coming of Christ, but also the signs of the coming that must occur before that is, the prophecy of persecution. Also, Jesus Christ prophesied, there will be those who will be killed. However, he says, that not a hair of your head will perish. You can gain your true life by endurance. If interpreted materially and physically, this is clearly contradictory. Therefore, this gospel should mean the following. Even if you are killed by persecution, by the consideration of God the Father, you will achieve spiritual victory and resurrection. During the oppression of the Second Omoto Incident, Onisaburo Deguchi, who was detained in 1937, loudly declared in the Osaka Appellate Court in 1943, "This year, I will get out of prison." Furthermore, at that time, I had a dream. Had a dream. In the dream I saw 8 moons and 7 suns in the sky. He said. These were words that foretold that he would be released on bail on August 7. In fact, when he was released on bail on August 7, he told the Omoto believers who came to greet him, "We will lose this war. Because it's a surprise attack." Also, it is said that on the day he was released on bail, he said, "From the day I got out, Japan started to lose." He also wrote August 7, 1943 on the back of a believer's colored paper, and when the believer interpreted it as his birthday, he said, "That's not true. This means that we are going to start losing the war." He is reported to have said. That was the day Onisaburo Deguchi himself was released on bail, and from that day on, Japan was heading for defeat in the Pacific War. And in World War II, where Japan was defeated in the Pacific War and its territory was occupied by the GHQ, we can find even more commonalities between this and the prophecies of the New Testament. In conclusion, in the 16th episode, we have examined the Second Omoto Incident that occurred in Omoto around 1935, which Steiner had foreseen as the fulfillment of the prophecy of the Bible. Through this, we have considered how the words and actions of Onisaburo Deguchi and the events of Omoto have become the situation as prophesied by Christ in the New Testament, and this has become evidence of the fulfillment of the prophecy. In the next episode, we plan to verify the evidence of the fulfillment of the prophecy of the coming in the New Testament by comparing it with the history of Japan. We will also examine the correlation between the prophecy of the New Testament and Omoto and Japan. Thank you very much for watching until the end. We look forward to your continued support.